Yes, indeed, they do. But often employees don't know what the right thing is. And in government, we have often talked about our bureaucratic rules and procedures that the Winter Report says we need less managers and supervisors to enforce. We have talked about those rules as a way to at least ensure that employees are doing the thing right. And we have perhaps kidded ourselves into believing that doing the thing right, following the rules, the laws, and the policies will somehow equate to being ethical and responsible. And it hasn't always. But it's better than some sort of a blind trust. And we have people who are in the business of government for reasons other than being public servants or for reasons other than serving the interests of the citizens. And so I'm concerned that there's no discussion of what it means to be a courageous and an ethical employee in the face of a leader who may not be as courageous and ethical. And one final thing, I don't want to take up too much time, but I was also concerned that there is no mention other than to say women and minorities are in a pretty bad state. There aren't many of us who have managed to get through that glass ceiling, and there is a statement that says we need to recognize that. And the recommendation is to make sure that more people, men and women, have greater access to education. And of course, it's by education that we do enter into employment and get the skills that we need to survive in jobs, wherever those jobs are. But it concerns me that there's no mention of the importance of education about the kinds of values this society has now embraced. And that is, people don't often know how to deal with women and minorities. People don't often know how to deal with employees who have family problems, whether those problems have to do with small children or whether those problems have to do with aging parents. People are frequently in life as an employee faced with tremendous responsibilities at home that they sometimes need help with managing in order to perform effectively in their jobs in government. And I think to assume those away and to believe that people will just lead and trust and do the right thing is overly simplistic and maybe even a little naive.
Okay, thank you. Mel Doublet, Rutgers University.
Sitting back there listening to Dick Nathan, I was writing notes on notes. And so I don't know whether these relate to each other, but generally I think there is some theme running through this. First, let me say that I was probably among what I think was probably just a handful of people that knew that the Winter Commission report was in the making. I think this is a very under-publicized report, and I was especially taken by the fact that it didn't make the news that it should have made when it was released, and that was no fault of the efforts of the people on the Commission. I happen to know in advance that on June 24th, I believe it was, there was going to be a presentation of the report at the White House in which President Clinton would accept the report from former Governor Winter. And I watched TV, and I must have watched about even C-SPAN, and saw nothing. And I think it was just a matter of timing, if I remember right. That was one of the critical budget battle days in the recent budget battle, and so it didn't get the publicity that it deserved. And I was very pleased to see Governing Magazine do the service that they've done by really distributing the Winter Commission report pretty effectively. And I was pleased to hear the figure that you had 6,000 respondents, and I'm sure that just represents a portion of the numbers who have actually seen the report. It's also a pretty positive sign that there's funding for the reproduction process going on now, and I hope that this conference and others like it spread the word about the Winter Commission report and its value. Out of the report, I want to make one comment about all the points out of the report. I was, like I said, one of the few people who knew about it. I'm a fairly active member now of the New Jersey chapter of ASPA, which is a pretty much a Trenton-based, state government-based chapter of the American Society for Public Administration. And when we were considering, on the council, we were considering what we will do as participants in the upcoming gubernatorial election. There were only 2 governors up for election this fall, New Jersey and Virginia. When we were looking at that, I kept on raising the Winter Commission report, and the state employees there at that point who sit on the council with me really didn't know what I was talking about. Finally got a hold of the commission report from Albany, plus the governing magazine article, and I must tell you that the response was extremely enthusiastic. Now, this is in New Jersey where, as Dick pointed out, at least recommendation 1 is well on its way. It's already actually been passed. We have a very strong executive system in the Constitution with only 1 elected official. But the point that really got everybody enthusiastic, and the one I would recommend to you if you haven't read the report carefully, is recommendation number 6, which I really think is 6, 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, 6.5. It's actually a report unto itself. And this is a point about learning government. And Willa already referred to this. At first, when this came up in the discussions with the New Jersey Council, I sort of sat back because it would seem self-serving for somebody from a university to go out there and say, hey, look at point 6. You know, we have to have more training. I guess who does the training? But it was the enthusiasm of the people who are in state government that got me all excited, and I think they realized that this is a major recommendation that if only it can be put through in every state, we'll see a lot better, more, well, how should I put it, happier, as well as more effective and efficient public administration. So I recommend to you point 6 in particular and all the subpoints thereof, and the whole idea of learning government. So one note. Second, third, and fourth, actually these all do relate. Dick's comment about the deeper changes that are necessary. And this has actually been a topic of conversation among the PAR editorial board, the Public Administration Review editorial board, that we have been going back and forth on this particular point because the reaction to not only the Winter Commission report, but also the Volcker Commission report and the NPR, the report, not the radio, the reaction has been that what's called for or implied in these reports is not just executive branch changes, but significant changes in the behavior, if not the structure, of the legislative branch and the judicial branch. And where we've been going back and forth is the idea that not only may this be necessary, but it may be something we ought to think about. You're calling basically for constitutional changes, and you have to start asking yourself whether the price is worth paying. We're talking about having Congress defer to the president in more and more areas, having the president defer to the bureaucracy in more and more areas. In the Winter Commission report, you're calling for a legislature that would defer more and more to a stronger governor who would in turn rely through trust and lead strategies on a better bureaucracy. Well, that has taken some people by surprise. They're wondering whether it's actually worth the kinds of things we have to give up. Congress, for all its bother and all the problems it causes, the judiciary, for all the liability that is increasingly imposing on the work of public administrators, is in fact exercising the constitutional guarantees, in a sense imposing constraints that make our system democratic. And so it's not that I've come out on one side or another, but I think as we talk about the deeper changes, which I agree are necessary if we're going to carry out these kinds of reforms, I think we also ought to think of what the implications are for, well, at least the constitutional implications are for us as citizens, as well as public administrators or people who are very supportive of public administration.